now we have our next talk. And this talk is about the menopause gap. Menopause for, I guess, kind of middle-aged women, females. And what problems arise because we don't talk about that, because there's maybe not enough medical science about that, and what does it mean for the LGBTQ plus community, and maybe there is a way out. Amy will now tell us. So give a big applause for Amy.
Thank you. Okay. Well, thank you all for being here. My name is Amy. A little bit about me is I moved here with my husband in 2016 to the Netherlands. My background is in the medical field since probably my early 20s. I currently work for a company that works directly with house doctors, providing specialized care for patients so that they can bypass the long wait times for the hospitals. And we also have a women's clinic that focuses mainly on women's care and the menopause. So we're offering education, support, and guidance as they go through this journey of menopause. So share what I know, maybe a little bit about my story, but I find that when we start to share where our struggles are in our lives, then we can create a space for others to join, conversations to open up, and really create a community of support, both for ourselves and for others. So just for the sake of the talk here, to keep it simple, so throughout the talk, I will sometimes use the term women, and what I'm actually referring to is anybody that has female reproductive organs in this, but I try to use language that is inclusive for everybody that is going through the transition of menopause. So why menopause deserves attention. So as of 2025, there's approximately 1.1 billion women that are in some phase of menopause, which means that there's 47 women yearly that enter into menopause. And what that means is just that either you are going through menopause, you know someone who is, but somehow there's probably someone who is directly connected to you that is in this sort of phase of their life. But the problem is menopause is often shrouded in silence, stigma, misunderstanding, and what this leads to is misdiagnosis, not being heard, being undervalued, and it just makes the process so much more difficult to get through. So we expose the full impact of menopause. So we talk about more than just saying, oh, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I'm not sleeping well. But we expose every area that it affects our lives. Then we can see how we can put the puzzle pieces together to be able to really create support. Also close the knowledge gap just by being educated through conversation. We can start to close the knowledge gap, but we can also speak up for ourselves and what we need and what we want. And it's also including the LGBTQ plus into the conversation. The 1.1 billion number for menopause actually does not include anybody in the queer community. This is just based on women, cisgender, in the community. So when we don't include them into the conversation and into the numbers, we are just leaving them out, and they do not have the support they need, the people that they need to talk to, but also huge gaps in their medical care. And we just want to challenge the stigmas around menopause with just an open conversation that's honest and very empathetic and based in education. So what is menopause anyway? So not too many biology lessons, but this is one of them. So there are 3 phases of menopause. We have perimenopause, we have menopause, and postmenopause. These are the only phases of menopause. So in perimenopause, It usually begins before menopause. It can happen around the ages of in your 40s, but they're finding that they're doing studies that symptoms are actually starting 7 to 10 years prior to that. So anyone who is maybe in their mid-30s can start to have symptoms of menopause. And this is when you start to notice symptoms, the estrogen in your body starts to decrease a little bit, and it usually lasts about 4 to 8 years. And in menopause, you go straight 12 months with no period and no cycle. And this is when you are now in menopause. And at this point, the estrogen in your ovaries have just taken a huge dive. So the symptoms get worse. You start to notice more things. And the symptoms will really start to peak. And then you have postmenopause, which is after those 12 months have passed, your hormone levels start to level out a little bit. Symptoms are not as intense. And you stay in postmenopause. This is where you stay for the rest of your life. There is no phase after this. So stigmas are these negative ideas that lead people to judge or kind of put people into a box of stereotypes. And so we start to see these type of stigmas that kind of repeat themselves over and over. And what that does is it causes women to start to kind of fall into this box that is being created. So, the version of yourself that really felt very grounded or very powerful or maybe even very feminine really starts to slip away. For queer individuals, those physical shifts that start to happen can start to trigger some gender dysphoria that you've maybe worked very hard at to kind of work through. Culturally, aging means fading, whether that's in desirability, that's in relevance and beauty, whatever it is. But if you're aging, that means you're fading. And the menopause narratives exclude queer individuals entirely. We've noticed this in the studies. And it's just leading these many to just feel erased and unsupported. So then we have the stigmas, and what it does is it creates a lot of silence. But in this silence, it teaches us to not complain about our symptoms, to downplay our symptoms. We start to doubt our own instincts, and we start to silence our inner voice. So when these things are ignored, the jokes or the stereotypes or whatever it may be, this message starts to get in our head and it becomes a reality for us. And we're told things like, good women don't complain, good women don't struggle. So then you tough through it, you get through it, but you still have an issue, and it starts to build and build. You keep smiling at work, you keep taking on extra work, you start showing up for everybody but yourself. And then you start to say in your head, I think I'm going crazy, or am I losing it? Why am I so weak? And when the narrative doesn't involve you, that quiet becomes incredibly deafening. And then you start to say, I really don't belong in this conversation at all. Why is my body working against me? So in the moment, these thoughts seem so real. They feel like our reality. But the problem is, it's a reflection of deeper cultural bias and stigmas. So once we start to recognize them, we can start to dismantle them, and we can really start to talk about the truths about menopause, and we can get away from these stigmas. So menopause doesn't just show up in one part of our life, it really touches every part of our life. So it's kind of like you get a house guest and they stay over. They say, I'm just gonna stay for a few days. But then you start to notice they're kind of like taking over your house. They're getting into the refrigerator, they're eating all your snacks. And then you realize, this is great. I have a new roommate, and they don't want to pay you rent. So now you have someone living in your house not paying rent. And these other areas are more than just the physical side of things. So we're talking about the physical side of it, then we talk about the emotional and the mental side of it. We have how it affects our social relationships, our intimate relationships with people, and actually how much it affects us in the workplace. Okay, so physical. So I think if we ever think about menopause, or when we do, we kind of think of the big threes. And I say that they're the mood swings, the night sweats, and the hot flashes. And I think these things are said and we're like, yep, that's menopause. And it happens because they are the most visible, they're the most talked about, so they get the spotlight for everything. And when we become so hyper-focused on just these three things, we miss all of the other symptoms that have such a huge impact on our life. And this is where the harm really begins. So it leads to gaps in cares, misdiagnosis, terrible punchlines in sitcoms, and it just becomes a joke. And it's at the expense of someone, and it's okay to make jokes and have a little humor to get through it, but when it becomes at the expense of someone, then it's no longer funny. So one more little short biology lesson, and then we move on. So one of the biggest drivers for menopause is when estrogen takes a dive off the cliff. And so estrogen actually powers nearly everything in your body for us. So when it starts to crash, you really start to feel it. And it's kind of like, I don't know what's going on. And you're like, I just need someone to explain it to me. And then you get like a letter from estrogen, and it's like, I'm gonna explain what's going on. But then you realize it's kind of like a breakup letter, and it's like, oh, dear you, it's me, not you. I've been with you through puberty, making your period okay, your heart is nice and strong, your bones are nice and strong, your hair, really nice. I've even made sex a little bit more comfortable for you. You're welcome. But then it starts to say, I just can't give you what you need anymore. So I'm just gonna take a step back really slowly, so it's really, really confusing for you. And yeah, sorry about that. But this is just how nature wrote our love story, with fading love, estrogen. And you go, well, that's not an explanation at all. You just think, okay, well, I'm still where I started, and I have no idea what's going on. So we know the big threes: hot flashes, mood swings, and night sweats. But there's so many other symptoms that stack up on a daily basis that really makes things very tricky. So you wake up tired, you get some coffee, you stare at it like it's completely betrayed you. By 9 a.m., you're thinking, oh, where's my phone? So you Google, where's my phone, on the phone that you cannot find, okay? You make it to work, you're in mid-meeting, you're negotiating with your armpits, like, keep it cool, man. Like, we're in the meeting, please stop sweating while you try to keep it cool. By 2 p.m., that's it. Energy, it's gone. You can't answer one more email. You can't have one other person come and talk to you. You get home, maybe your partner asks how your day is, and you just lose it, telling them about your lunch order and how they put mustard on your sandwich. End of the world. Bedtime comes around, you're so exhausted, you lay down in bed, next thing you know, you hear the Netflix sound, and it turns on, it says, hey, we're gonna watch a full season of Anxiety. You're gonna love this. We're gonna binge watch it all night. And then you get night sweats. Your sheets are soaking wet, you can't get back to sleep, and you wake up, the cycle continues. It's just Groundhog's Day all over again. And there's no single way to actually experience this, but what this is saying is it's very complex, and everybody's a little bit different, but it's just not the big threes. You have all of this other stuff that comes along with it. So the physical symptoms are just one side of it. So we have the mental side, and menopause can hit your mental stamina just as hard. So you have things like brain fog, memory issues, mood swings. And the forgetfulness is not just one of those like, oh, I forgot to put the laundry in the dryer. It's one of those things you say, I walked in this room, and you go, okay, well, I don't know why I'm here. 10 minutes later, you're like, I was supposed to take the dog for a, what's that word? You put one foot in front of the other, and you like propel yourself forward. You're like, I've used this word a million times, probably since I was a child. what's that word? So you carry on, 20 minutes in, you're like, walk, that's the word. Wanted to go for a walk. But that starts to build up when you continually start to forget these words that you have used your whole life, thousands of times. Mood swings, 10 a.m., you're holding it together, you get on your phone, you watch a cat video, end of the world. You're crying over it. Maybe your partner comes into the room, see what's going on. Well, they're just breathing way too loud. So you snap at them. They have no idea what's going on. You feel bad that you snapped, then you start to cry, you start to feel guilty. Super quick short story. The little things can really throw you off. One time my husband said, hey, if you were on a desert island, would you like to be with Seuss or would you like to be with Sarah? And I lost it. I started crying and I thought, why would you put me on a deserted island with two people who are really not that close to me? Oh, sorry, Moose, I'm so sorry. Okay, you're on a deserted island with your best friends. You have Liz and you have Jen. Who is it? Why would you make me choose between my two best friends? You are a monster. How dare you? So these small things just really seem so big. So your sleep is disruptive. Again, 3 a.m. comes rolling around. You think, oh, what's on my grocery list? Oh no, should I put that on my grocery list? Then it starts to go, and then you start laying there and you're like, are my teeth actually outside bones? So then you sit there and you think, morning comes around, alarm goes off, you don't know if your teeth are your outside bones, and it's time to climb Mount Everest, and all you have is a pair of flip-flops. Good luck for your day. One day you look in the mirror and you go, when did I become ma'am? Right? Menopause is this thing that is just like, time's marching on. Society idolizes beauty and desire in this, and we're just kind of marching on past it. Short fuse, it happens a lot. Small things, big things, deserted island, small thing was a big thing. And you just feel guilty the way that you react, and you think, I'm completely unhinged. I'm so unhinged. But the thing is you're not dramatic, you're not vain, you're not too much, you're not lazy, you're not losing your mind. It's just that your nervous system is doing like the cha-cha-cha in your brain with hormones, and you're just working on barely a battery that's charged. So you're just doing your best with what you have. So the symptoms we talk about are just the tip of the iceberg. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I think it's just fair to say that there's actually over 100 symptoms that are associated with menopause. So when we focus on those 3 and maybe a little honorable mentions, you have all of this other stuff. And when we don't recognize this, and there's a lack of education in the medical system with doctors, then we miss this stuff, and then the next thing you know, you're told, you're good, you just got burnout. Go take a few days on holiday to Spain or something. But really, you have all of this other stuff that can happen. So the problem isn't just lack of information, it's just that we have ignored and minimalized the actual things that happen to us. So we've touched briefly on some mental and emotional struggles that are faced during menopause. But I think the mental part of this journey actually carries the heaviest weight for people. So it's going to have a little bit more of our attention today. And for me personally, this was the heaviest place for me, that I felt the menopause the most. So we have the heavier shadows that is menopause. So your mind is really overloaded. You're not sleeping well, and these words are slipping away that you have. But then you start to notice that the anxiety and things start to get a little bit more intense. Now the words that you can't think of are happening in the middle of really important meetings. The confidence that you had is just kind of quietly going away. You start to hesitate to speak about anything, question anything. You just start to really doubt yourself. And for those already facing marginalization, the emotional weight of this only deepens, and you might stop doing hobbies that you really, really love because it's just too much and it just feels too heavy. no more joy, it's drained from you, the isolation grows, and finding support and understanding can feel, again, like climbing Mount Everest. So it can bring intense feelings of that isolation, even when you're surrounded by very supportive people. I was very lucky, and my husband knew how to support me in ways that I did not even know, and he showed up every minute, every day for me. But I have never felt so alone in my life in those moments, even though I had a really good support system. So it feels hard because you always feel alone, and it made it difficult for me to feel like I could talk about it with him, even though I know that he supported me. For a lot, it's a loss of identity. The person that you were becoming and that you thought that you were is just fading. For queer individuals, these shifts can also intensify gender dysphoria, making it even more isolating process. But you might find that you're pulling away socially. The roles that you have in your family might be changing. You might not be following through with that. Conversations are getting harder, and you just feel like you're silently struggling, and there's no outlet for you to put all of that feeling into. But this can even go even deeper, and the challenges of it really require more open and honest and a deeper conversation about it. So menopause can really feel like it's shattering your mind. The sleep that you're losing starts to turn to feelings of, I can't remember this, I'm so exhausted. I actually think that I have dementia. I actually don't think that I have menopause. I really think I'm losing my mind. You're having vivid nightmares when you're sleeping that keep you up at night. You start to have panic attacks. Your heart starts racing. You start thinking about all the terrible things that can happen in your life. And this panic comes out of nowhere, not triggered by anything, but it's just there. And for many queer individuals, menopause actually reopens a lot of old wounds, whether it's medical trauma, rejection, or just straight discrimination. So you can start to feel detached from reality. It's almost like you're watching your life from the outside, and you think, why am I not involved with what's going on? Why am I not involved with my own thoughts? Depression starts to come in. Dark thoughts of actually self-harm and just needing things to be numb. You just need everything to just stop. You have intrusive thoughts that just loop in your head constantly. Rage comes up. Since it's an open conversation, I punched many walls. I punched the ground when I was so angry, and I just had to get it out some way. And it just came out in the need for just the physical energy to come out of my body. And for some, the pain in the heaviness of it just becomes so consuming that sometimes you just think, I can't do this anymore. And I think suicide and menopause really need to be talked about together, openly, urgently, and without shame. And this is where I sat in my menopause journey. It took a really long time after things leveled out for me to even openly to my husband say, I was suicidal. The shame that I had to have to say those words was really, really heavy, but at the same time, incredibly freeing that I was able to finally acknowledge that this is where I was at. And you feel like you're losing your mind. So as symptoms deepen and daily life feels harder, some individuals start to have this feeling of self-harm, suicide. But this is one of the most under-researched areas for menopause. There are some studies coming out, so it's really great, but there's just kind of this intersection of midlife and menopause that happens. So the trends actually show that the suicide rates actually the suicide risks really ramp up in this perimenopause phase. And I think it has a lot just to do with your health background, where you're at the start of your hormones shifting, not knowing what's going on. But the risk actually stays pretty high during the actual phase of menopause, and then it begins to go down a little bit. But as far as suicidal ideations, thinking about it, it's actually high across all phases of menopause, and it stays pretty high through the whole journey. But there's kind of this ramp up in the postmenopause, which I think it has a lot to do with just our idea socially of aging, and that it has this kind of negative stigma, and I think it becomes very difficult for individuals. So these struggles often go unseen, dismissed as you're just hormonal, you're just being hormonal. You'll just keep pushing through, yep, you'll get through it. But really, it's just a sign of some deeper pain that is going on, which deserves our attention. So across the globe, the suicide rates in women consistently kind of peak between the ages of 45 and 54, and this is in the US. Europe follows very similarly in the trend behind it. But very interesting, in Asia, there's a huge spike in suicidal rates between 65 and 45. Which is probably due to more cultural views of aging. So again, it's not to say that menopause causes suicide, but there is an overlap that really needs to be addressed because of this intersection of midlife and of menopause. Unfortunately, it's very sad for the queer individuals. Oh, that's really loud. There's not a lot of studies, pretty much no studies of suicide rates in menopause. There's no numbers at this moment so that we can help them work through this journey as well. But there are studies that say that 51% of queer adults and 17 to 20% of queer adults that are over 50 are reporting suicidal thoughts. So the thing is it's there, but we don't have the information to support the community like we really could if we involved more research and more studies. The other thing is that we have to take into account past medical history as well. So menopause can actually worsen an already diagnosed mental diagnosis, whether it's bipolar, depression, whatever it may be. The fluctuation in the hormones can also really make what they're currently dealing with even harder. So this is why it's really important for inclusive care, personalized care, and going to someone who really knows how to monitor your transition through the healthcare system. So balancing the mind during menopause. So can rattle your sense of self, but there are ways to steady the mind. So there's so many things. You staying active, seeking support, talking to professionals, talking to family, talking to people who you really trust, changing the narrative about how we speak about menopause to each other and also to ourselves. Getting out and moving, trying to get better sleep, actual medical care as far as hormone therapy, maybe doing supplements. But talking about it really helps to break that silence and those stigmas, so that you can really find the support that you are looking for. Because listen, you do not have to go through this alone, even though sometimes it feels very lonely. So menopause just doesn't whisper through your hormones, it kind of really echoes into your social life. So suddenly the group app that you're in, it's way too loud. The meetings at work, they're far too long. And the idea of putting pants on for dinner, that's not going to happen. So it can quietly unravel the relationships you have, whether it's with a partner, it's with friends, maybe it's even with yourself. So in partnerships, you might seem that you're a little bit more irritable, there's low libido, the emotional strain and distance becomes way greater between your partner. They did a study in the UK, and they say that about 73% of women in the UK says that their menopause symptoms and journeys has actually contributed to the breakdown of their marriage. And that is a really, really high number. And women 40 years old and plus initiated divorces as well. At 60% of them initiated divorces. And your social energy dips too. You cancel plans. You find that others just don't understand what you're going through. 37% say that menopause affects their social life, and 1 in 5 say they have completely lost joy in the things that they like to do. And in peer spaces, invisibility really can be painful. So when you try to share your story or share what you're trying to go through, and it's met with misunderstanding, terrible jokes, silence, then it just really deepens that isolation that you might already feel. So you try to keep it together. You carry on what goes on in the house, the groceries, maybe you take care of the kids, maybe you have all this other stuff. But then you start to miss a birthday, you start to miss a call. You just don't feel like you're showing up emotionally, and then the guilt sets in. And now you have this new thing of just dealing with the guilt of just feeling like you're just not enough. So it shifts more than your body. It can really stir up a lot of grief because there's this version of you that felt sharp, super social, you love doing all of these things, you felt very grounded, and you start to question your identity. And it can be very quiet, but it's very powerful. So the spaces built for menopause only leave queer individuals at the margins. And so they start to navigate this process by themselves without any support or affirmative care. So again, these phases can feel very, very lonely. Your social identity is shaken up, but just remember that it's not a death sentence. Okay, so if you want to go to dinner and you don't want to put any pants on, you do it. So thriving through menopause. So there's a few things you can do. If you're someone who is walking along someone who is dealing with something like this, the best thing you can do is just make yourself present. Don't fix anything. Don't give advice. Just be present. Listen without judgment. Make space for the messy stuff that happens. And it can be very, very healing for individuals. And for yourself, give yourself the same love and care and grace that you would give someone else who was going through this. And that's what we can do for ourselves. It's not about powering it through. It's about honoring what's going on in our life and our body and our mind. So in the workspace, so sometimes menopause feels like it hits a little bit harder than how your morning coffee is actually helping you out, and the Monday morning meeting just feels like a marathon that has no end. But the thing is, it actually can have bigger effects more than just making it hard to work. It can really take a toll on the economy as far as your retirement, your paycheck, and things like that. So I think one of the biggest things in the healthcare and in the workplace is what is available for people that are going through menopause. So policies are mainly set up for cisgender and hetero women, so there's no inclusivity for queer individuals. There's a pay gap. It's hard to speak up when you're struggling at work because of the stigmas around menopause. And without these flexible policies, it just makes it feel like it's just a heavy burden to go to work every day. So the financial toll that can happen with menopause, missed work, reduced hours, hard to follow through on work deadlines. And many women actually turn down promotions and end up leaving their jobs because it's just too much. So it's just not a health issue, it's also an economical one, and it's really time for our system to be able to catch up. So if menopause had an HR review, there'd probably be some really big concerns. It's been reported that about 38% report showing up to work and just pushing through when they're not healthy enough to do so, because the risk of not showing up is way higher than saying, I can't do this, I can't come in. 2 in 5 have considered changing their jobs altogether, and in the UK, 900,000 women have already left their work because of menopause symptoms. In the US, in 2025 so far, there's been an estimated $1.8 billion in productivity loss that happens pretty consistently. Actually, every year, I said 2025, but consistently every year there's about 1.8 million in loss due to absences. But I want to be very clear that this isn't about blaming the individuals of this. It's just acknowledging that the system that we have wasn't built for this stage in life, because the peak for women in their careers is between 40 and 55. So the system is not costing us, or the system is what is costing us, not the individuals that are going through it. So workplace culture can shape the menopause experience, and right now too many are suffering. 31% of women feel comfortable talking about menopause at work, and 53 say that it impacts their daily work life. So it affects productivity, mental health, financial stability, and yet it remains one of the most overlooked subjects in the workplace. But the good news is, change doesn't have to be big, it just has to be intentional. And honest conversations, including policies at work and supporting our colleagues, is what can really make the difference for someone. So it's not just one thing, it's really kind of everything. So one symptom can trigger another symptom that triggers another symptom that triggers another symptoms. So you have the physical symptoms, and then it just really takes a toll on your mental health, the brain fog, not being able to think clearly at work, maybe having some depression. And then the mental strain, you don't want to be around anybody. You start to socially withdraw. You don't want to be part of the things that you actually loved. That isolation, then you carry it over into your career, and it's being difficult to just show up at the level that you normally want to for your work. And then that worsens the physical and mental symptoms, and then we're back at the top again. And it's just this cycle. You're on this ride that you're like, I did not sign up for this ride. Also, my seatbelt is broken. Can somebody please check this out? But there's nobody there to check your seatbelt. And you just get in this loop, and sometimes it can just feel so impossible to get off of it. So the truth of the conversation that matters, what is really good to keep in mind is that it can start earlier than expected. Like I said, 7 to 10 years prior to actual perimenopause. You can start to have symptoms. You start to see these things maybe in your early to mid-30s. If you have had any surgery where you've had ovaries removed, or if you haven't had children, it just propels you into this phase of your life way sooner than you had expected, and now you're just wildly unprepared for what's going on. And every experience is a little bit different. So menopause isn't a one-size-fits-all type of thing, and we need to recognize that. which requires us to be able to just listen to what's going on in somebody's journey. And there's ways to manage the symptoms: exercise, diet, supplements, actual medical treatment of hormone replacement, seeking out someone to speak to, a professional, to be able to talk through stuff, and support. I think support and understanding is such a big thing for people who feel unheard or dismissed. And so we just have to have compassion for ourselves, and we have to have compassion for others. Because menopause is not a medical mystery. It's just menopause. So by gaining knowledge and being educated, we start to dismantle these stigmas, and we create a space for truth and conversation and for support. So the system wasn't built for queer individuals in mind. So that leaves many out there out of the research, out of the language, out of the care, out of the diagnosis, because it's very focused on cisgender women. So when there's no research, there's no understanding, and without understanding, all of the support falls apart. Oh, I went too far. Anyway, okay. So we can't undo the lack of research. We can't instantly fix the healthcare system, which has failed to include many individuals. But the power that we have in this is to stop looking at trying to fix individuals in menopause, and we start to fix ourselves on how we view them. So it's not about fixing someone, it's about fixing ourselves to understand the journey that they're on. You can fix the silence by speaking up, and you can build a culture that sees menopause not as a decline, but really as a celebration. Menopause is deeply human for us to go through it. So menopause can be very, very messy. The intensity of it can really break you down, but then when you are broken open, that's how the light can get in, and you can see into the future of how things will get better. And on the other side of all of this brain fog and all of the whole thing, things get clearer, sharper, brighter. You're unedited. You start to just speak your mind. The things that you used to care about, you just do not care about anymore. You stop apologizing for everything, and you just start caring about the right things. So not everyone talks about this part, but for me, the positive that came out of my journey and my start into menopause has been so incredibly powerful that I feel like I am now the person that I'm supposed to be. It's just very easy, and it's very powerful. So there is a positive side to going through menopause as we discover really who we are, and we begin to feel comfortable again in our skin. Okay, that's it.
Okay, wow. Amy, that was really awesome. Thank you for that. And I'm quite happy because I was worried, do I have beginning dementia? So I think there's something else beginning. So I was actually happy to hear that. So do you have any questions? Then there's a microphone. Please line up and go ahead.
So you mentioned specifically individuals that are born with female reproductive organs. I have a number of trans friends in the US and the UK who are absolutely terrified that gender-affirming care is going to cease to be available. And once they lose access to HRT, they're going to go through menopause, and they're not prepared for it. And there's no studies on what will happen, because generally trans people is, just keep taking the blue pills, you'll be fine.
Yeah, fair.
Any advice? Also, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's good. That is really good. It's so hard because what actually needs to change is the system that we have. And even if we had an incredible abundance amount of money, let's say, we still wouldn't be able to change the system. But what we can start to do is to educate ourselves and to see where our outlets are. And we get connected with communities, but we start to educate ourselves, and then we know how to really advocate for ourselves, to say, no, I need this, I need to find this type of doctor, you're not giving me what I need, I'm gonna go where I need to go. But it's very disheartening that it's just not that easy. And a lot of doctors, if they do want to help, not all but some, are uneducated themselves to be able to provide the proper care. Yeah, this is it. We can talk further if you would like to. Yeah.
You mentioned that you go through, we go through like these really horrific or like scary things like nightmares and stuff like that. And I was wondering, can you develop PTSD from that as well? That after menopause, like in post-menopause, you still suffer from it?
Yeah. That's a great question. I actually don't know the answer to that. But yes, I think that when we, in general, as humans, go through things that are traumatizing and are really deeply affect us, they now hold some place in our life that we remember, right? And I think there are probably situations for people that, yes, there is this kind of trauma that is associated with it. But that's actually a very good question. I don't really know if any statistics about it, but I'm going to actually look it up. Thank you for asking that question. Yeah.
Is there anything known about the genetic component? So my mother went through menopause like with 45, one day to the other, no symptoms, no hot flashes, nothing. Yeah. And I am 33 and in perimenopause already. Does my life just suck, or is it random chance?
No, so everybody's journey is a little bit different. There are things that can cause it to happen sooner. A little bit is genetics, as far as how grandmother, mother, how it kind of worked in the family. But it is things like if you've never had children, if you've had some type of surgery, if you have even things, medical diagnosis, that it can propel you in sooner. But I think we actually have known that it can start sooner. We just have started to do studies. So there is this 7 to 10 years before perimenopause that you can start to have this decrease in estrogen and you start to have these symptoms. But there can be sometimes a genetic predisposition to it starting earlier. And I'm sorry to hear that it has started very soon for you.
On? Yes, now it's on. I also got fibromyalgia, so that may be related. Okay, thank you.
Yes, of course.
So I feel really unprepared to understand what kind of hormonal therapy could help me. I've gone through my life. I knew if I have severe PMS, I can take the pill. If I want to prevent getting pregnant, I can take the pill. Those kind of things you learn in school. But honestly, going into this next stage, if there's something that could help me, I would really like to learn about it, but I feel like there is no place to start.
Yeah. So there's a lot of places. I mean, there's things like supplements and stuff, but when it comes to hormone replacement therapy, it's not quite the same as the pill, but it is estrogen and it's progesterone, right? So if you have a uterus, you need progesterone. Okay, and then the estrogen is starting to decrease. So now you need to bring the estrogen back up to start to level everything out. It's not really talked about. There was this. So way back in the day, there was a guy who put a study out that said hormone replacement therapy will give you breast cancer. He did no studies, and he actually redacted the study and said, nope, that's not actually how it was. But you have generations before that took their hormone replacement therapies and they flushed it down the toilet because they did not want breast cancer. So hormone replacement therapy, I think, is based in fear. That if you get on it, but I'm going to tell you, for me, I would hear women talk about being on hormone replacement therapy, and I was like, okay. And I had my husband tell me, women say it's the greatest thing of their life. And I'm like, nope. I now am in the club of it is the greatest thing that has ever happened to me. But I did have to fight to get there. Yeah.